I'm Dennis Anderson along with Julie Zenner. Here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
8 years after taking office, Duluth Mayor Ness is about to step down and return to private life. Mayor Ness and wife Laura are here to talk about those eventful years in office.
New cost figures released this week could put the Northern Lights Express passenger train back on track.
And we'll have the business headlines and a look back at a story in the news 25 years ago.
So don't go away. The last Almanac North of 2015 is next. Well, hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thank you very much for watching. Julie, hard to believe that 8 years have passed since the Nesses became Duluth's first family.
Yes, time goes very quickly.
Well, we're going to give it right over to you because we've got a couple of great guests lined up for right now.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Denny, and welcome everyone. It has been 8 years since a fresh-faced city councilor took the oath of office and became mayor of Duluth. The city of Duluth was facing a large deficit, and the legacy costs of retired employee health benefits threatened to bankrupt the city. After a turbulent first year, the mayor and his advisors managed to right the ship, and he went on to become one of the most popular leaders in city history. Well, joining us now for the last time as mayor is Ness and his partner in life, wife Laura. And thanks to both of you for being here. Really appreciate you taking the time to come in.
Oh, thanks.
A few more gray hairs than the first time we had you here, I think.
Yeah, quite a few more gray hairs.
Mayor, when you look back at the difficult first few years in office, would you do it all over again?
Boy, you know, I don't know. The toll that 2008 and 2009 took on our family and on us on a personal level, that was really difficult to get through. And I don't think I could have made the commitment knowing how difficult that was. But you know, at the same time, now that we look back 8 years later, and as difficult as that was, you know, it kind of added now to the sense of what we've accomplished, as well as seeing the very stark difference about how terrible it was then and that it's better today.
Laura, what's it like for you now as your mayor, as your husband leaves the mayor's office? He's your mayor too, but what's it like now as you're leaving this high position?
Well, I'm not sure what to expect next. I just feel like a witness, and I hope it goes well for Donnie.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's going to miss the job terribly or if he'll feel some relief. I don't know what to expect.
Do you feel a little relief?
I feel a little relief and a fair amount of curiosity. Really, it's a great unknown.
I heard you call him Donnie. I thought Donnie left us many, many years ago.
Not for Laura, not for family and close friends from high school. Yeah, I'm still Donnie.
News was made in the city of Duluth today, Mayor, of course, with we found out that the police chief is leaving for Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah.
Your thoughts about that?
Well, you know, first of all, I think we in Duluth are very fortunate to have Gordon as our chief for the last 10 years. And I feel especially thankful and fortunate to have Gordon as my chief for all 8 years that I've been mayor. And that's one of the most important relationships that a mayor has, is with their police chief. And you know, you think of John Fido and Eli Militich, and you think of Gary Doty and Scott Lyons, and I'm fortunate to have somebody that really we had the same approach to these big issues, and I trusted him completely.
What did Chief Ramsey bring to the job?
Well, you know, I think he has a combination of the old school characteristics that you expect from a chief. You know, he's tough, he's decisive, he's a champion for public safety, but then he also brought this softer side, which was, you know, he's very empathetic, he's kind, he understood the importance of investing in relationships at a community level, and that can help avoid some of the conflict that we've seen in other cities across the nation.
So a couple of real high-profile folks leaving pretty soon now. You're leaving at what some would consider really the height of your political career. Any regrets as that day gets closer that you decided not to run again?
Well, I mean, sometimes there are those moments that I know that I'll miss parts of this job. At the same time, because it's Emily Larson coming into the role, and I just have so much confidence in her. She's going to be a fantastic mayor and bring a lot to this role that I haven't been able to bring, and that's going to be good for the city. So I do think that this was the right time, and it's going to be a good thing for the city of Duluth.
Has she asked you for any advice, or is there any advice you could give to her?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we talk on a regular basis. You know, I consider Emily a friend, and you know, I think she's very open in asking me for my perspective. I certainly don't expect her to, you know, accept every piece of advice that I give, but you know, we have that sort of open dialogue going, and I think that should be healthy and allow for me to give input, but have give her the space to do the job on her own.
A very high-profile job with lots of demands. Laura, for the family, what's it been like to really have your kids born and starting to grow up in the spotlight locally?
We do have our 3 kids with us
They're
in the
here.
studio, and I'm kind of on pins and needles. Start to screech.
They're always very well behaved, by the way.
Oh, well, that's really great to hear from you.
Very inaccurate.
But what's it been like?
It's been neat for them. I think it's been special for them. We, I think, have had maybe a more private arrangement than some families would, because I'm a little nervous about their behavior in public, I have to admit. And I think that the pairing of the job and then growing into parenthood at the same time, that was a challenge for me particularly, and maybe somewhat for Donnie. But I think the kids have been wonderful, and we have grown together as a family in ways that probably is special, considering.
Don, as you look back now and reflect on being mayor of Duluth for 8 years, your biggest accomplishment and perhaps your biggest disappointment?
Well, you know, I think the catch-all is that I think people feel better about the city of Duluth, and they're more confident, more optimistic, and that translates into people making an investment, whether it's in their home or their business or in their personal skills, and that then creates this virtuous cycle. You know, there are other issues that I'm proud of: retiree health care and sanitary sewer overflows, solving some of the big problems that have hung over the city for a long time. But I think it's the combination of those.
And we do have a video clip from back in your first year as mayor. So let's take a look back
All right,
at
let's
that.
do that.
Talk about some of the changes you made that you feel are some of your greatest successes in your first year in office.
So much has been overcoming crisis, and I think we have dealt well. We moved quickly. We overcame a major financial crisis. At the beginning of the year, we were in no position to effectively have a plan for to eliminate sanitary sewer overflows. We now have a plan in place that I am confident that we're actually going to succeed and avoid million-dollar fines to the federal government for not complying with the consent decree. But I think most importantly, what I'm trying to do is establish a different tone and culture within city politics. I don't engage in kind of that back and forth petty politics or the grandstanding, and hopefully over time we can establish that and focus on the complexity of the issues rather than kind of the grandstanding politics that tend to distract us from the issue at hand.
Don, for the most part, you followed your own advice. Did you find that difficult?
That kid was way too young to be mayor. I don't know how anybody voted for him, but it is fun to hear, and you know, that's. I did have an idea of how you could approach this job, and maybe in a way that was, you know, different than other politicians have approached it, and it is fun to see that it was that approach that got us through the tough times, and then it was also that approach that allowed, you know, to contribute and hopefully, you know, accelerate some of the good times.
Laura, would Don bring his work home?
Donnie is, he's considerate in that fashion. I know he's always thinking and mulling on things, but there isn't a lot of paperwork in our house, and he takes care of the phone messages, and I've actually been quite impressed.
Really?
He does.
Nice.
He's
It is the pad of paper after that we put the kids to bed, and I'll have my pad of paper and kind of making notes about the next speech or the next editorial. But Laura's been fantastic, very patient through this entire thing.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned in that clip staying away from petty politics, and incivility has really become an issue in politics locally, nationally, all across the boards. What do you think is the future of the political landscape? Do you think that it's ever going to reach a point where we can go back to just disagreeing with people and not having it be so caustic?
Well, I'd sure like to think so. And I think I'm just so discouraged about the tone of the national debate these days, and especially in the presidential race. And I hope that people are so discouraged with the nature of this debate that they'll demand something better from our elected officials and our candidates in this country. And hopefully in a very small and modest way at a local level, we can establish that politicians can make themselves vulnerable to and kind of accept criticism in a constructive way and develop that relationship. That's the sort of grounding that we need to see start getting back into state and federal government.
Laura, was it difficult when there was criticism of Don along the way?
It really was. I think we've had it easy. People have been wonderfully kind to Donnie. But yeah, the few times that it was getting pretty dark, it was hard on me.
Don, as you leave office, is Duluth in pretty fair financial shape?
Well, I think it's all relative, but certainly compared to where we were in 2008, when we had a negative general fund balance, today it's up to $9 million. We've been able to slow the growth of the city budget over the years and continue to put money aside. And of course, the retiree health care issue, that we now have stability, that retirees can know that the benefit will be there for the rest of their lives, and taxpayers can know what the cost will be to pay for that.
You spend a lot of time traveling around the country and acting as a cheerleader on behalf of Duluth. What makes Duluth so special?
Well, I think Duluth finds itself in a very unique place in the upper Midwest, and it is our unique sense of place, and that unique sense of place invites in people who are creative, who are progressively minded, who are entrepreneurial in their spirit. And I think that's the thing that's really catching hold, is that people come to Duluth and it feels different than other cities across the Midwest, and we become a destination for people that have that energy and vitality.
I'm sitting here wondering, am I looking at a future state lawmaker or future governor? Would you consider another run for public office?
I think that at least for the next 10, 15 years, politics is off the table, and we really want to concentrate on being with our family and getting our kids through high school. I would never close the door, but at the same time, I think the political job that I was meant for was to be mayor of my hometown. When I think of any other political position, I can't see it being a good fit. Now, maybe in 15 years I'll think differently, but at least today, this was the job that I wanted, and I feel blessed to have had the opportunity.
So 10, 15 years from now, you could be mayor of Duluth again.
Well, who knows? Yeah. Mayor Hagan did it.
I was just going to say the same thing. Mayor Hagan's second time around.
So what's next for you? Everybody is speculating about where you're going to go, who you're going to be working for, or if you're going to be off on your own. Have you made any decisions?
Well, I think we are kind of honing in on a path, and we're certainly not ready to make any announcement at this point. But I think the difficulty is that I have a definitive end date. January 4th, I'm done, and then moving on to the next thing. And the sort of job that I'd be interested in moving into are the sort that come around every few years. So I think in the short run, it's probably going to be more project-based, and there's a couple of exciting ideas that I'd like to explore, but probably not like the one position that would be all-encompassing.
Yeah.
The police chief's open. Laura, I bet it'll be nice to have him around.
Yeah, I imagine. I hope.
You hope?
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be.
Mayor Ness, Laura Ness, thank you so much for coming in, and
Thank
thank
you
you
both
for your years
very
of
much.
service to the community.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Now, let's dig into our news file archive for a look at what was making news 25 years ago this week.
3 years ago, it was only an idea. Now it is a model. A new shrine to Vietnam veterans to be built in Duluth is finally taking shape. The Duluth Building Trades announced union workers will donate labor to build it, and veterans announced all they need is $145,000 more to complete the project.
We felt that we owed it to the vets whose names are going to be on this wall. We owed it to the men and women who came back from Vietnam, and we felt we owed it to the men that are still over there in Vietnam.
The memorial includes a bunker, a wall for names of 100 Northlanders lost in the Vietnam conflict, and a statue. The creator of the model, Dwight Nelson, explains why he chose the design.
Of course, the bunker is safety. The bunker was shelter, was security. As the sun rises, that ray of light is going to go down the list of names so that each name will be remembered every morning that the sun rises. And they will be individuals again.
With or without all the money, organizers hope to begin building the memorial sometime next year. For Late Edition, John Gagnon, KDLH News.
The projected cost of a proposed high-speed passenger train between the Twin Ports and the Twin Cities has been cut nearly in half. The Northern Lights Express train, NLX for short, would connect Duluth and Superior to Minneapolis at speeds of about 90 miles an hour on an existing railway corridor. The Minnesota Department of Transportation now says the cost would be in the $500 million range. So where would the money come from, and will operating subsidies be needed? We'll ask Ken Buehler from the Lake Superior Railroad Museum. Ken is the NLX Technical Advisory Chair, and John Ongaro is the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for St. Louis County. Thanks you, gentlemen, for being here. Ken, what's brought the price down? What caused the price to be cut in half?
What we did was we looked at the realistic version of a rail transit system that would connect Duluth Superior with Minneapolis. And what we found was if you lower the speed from a projected speed of 110 miles an hour, where you needed additional track, special designated track, and you were able to go at 90 miles an hour, which really doesn't affect the time of the trip all that much, you save having to build all this special designated track. The other thing was if we cut from 8 trains a day in the corridor to just 4 trains, you need less train sets. And as these trains become more and more sophisticated and more creature comforts are added to them, they become quite expensive. So you cut in half the number of trains running, you only need half as many train sets.
Mm-hmm. So you cut down the speed to 90 miles an hour, and there are stops along the way, making the trip last about 2.5 hours, I understand. People can drive to the Twin Cities in 2 hours and 15 minutes and have a car on the other end. What's the appeal of taking a train?
Well, Julie, certainly the goal all along has been to be able to at least meet or beat the automobile from a time standpoint. Congressman Oberstar, when we first started this project, he said, wait until the Twin Cities starts to build out its light rail and commuter rail system, because once the train gets to the Twin Cities, in this case Target Field Station, you'll be able to have several other opportunities to step off that train, cross a rail platform, and step onto another train, a light rail train, a commuter train, that will get you to downtown St. Paul now, to the Mall of America, the airport, soon to the northwestern suburbs, soon to the southwestern suburbs, soon to the northeastern suburbs. So there'll be all those opportunities. And during this whole time period, other forms of transportation have opened up, such as Uber, for example. You know, half the price of paying for a cab fare, and you can call Uber up, and Uber will be there instantly and drive you that last mile that you need to get to. So there's plenty of opportunities now from a connectivity standpoint to make that basically a seamless effort.
Ken, Duluth has had passenger and train service in the past. It's worked for a while, but then it's died off. I think we last had it 30 years ago. What's the assurance it'll work this time?
Everything has changed in 30 years, I think, with the exception of you still being on television, of course. Everything else has changed in 30 years, and that is that we have millennials who aren't really crazy about having a car anymore. It's not an important part of their life. It's not the same status symbol that it was for us to have that first car and use it. They're not really that interested. They would rather take mass transit. You have one major addition to the scene that wasn't here 30 years ago, and that's that Grand Casino in Hinckley, which in our models works like a city of almost 1 million people because of the comings and goings for that Grand Casino in Hinckley. The other thing is, 30 years ago, Duluth wasn't the tourist destination that we are today. I always use the analogy 30 years ago, if you remember, and people do, I'm sure, Canal Park was nothing more than a junkyard and a place that you didn't want to go after 8 o'clock at night. Now it's a place you have to go after 8 o'clock at night because that's where all the fun is. So everything has changed.
Mm-hmm. What kind of ridership do you actually have to generate to make this a profitable endeavor?
Well, the latest estimates, and I want to clarify that up until now, the studies that have been done have been sponsored by the Northern Lights Express Alliance, paid for by them. This latest study was paid for by the Federal Rail Administration and the Minnesota Department of Transportation, thanks to our federal congressional delegation and our Minnesota legislative delegation. They got over $8 million together to do this latest study, which still isn't totally complete because there's still an environmental side to it. But they essentially have been able to come in with refined numbers that, as Ken has mentioned, the capital costs are down substantially. As far as the operating costs, yes, our goal all along was to have a break-even operation or to make a slight profit, but it looks like in the early years, the ramp-up years, there'd still be about a $3 million operating deficit that would have to be made up. But the good news is, in the latest federal transportation bill that just passed 2 weeks ago, for the first time in the history, there's now a railroad title within that transportation bill, and there's one of the provisions in that railroad title specifically has earmarked $20 million a year for each of the next 5 years, specifically for up to 6 former Amtrak routes to take care of any operating subsidy they need in the first 3 years. And because we're so far along, we think, we are certainly one of those 6 that could be eligible for that.
Would you need between 200 and 300 passengers per train to meet expectations?
Well, that varies. The interesting thing is that when the consultants out of Boston actually is who did a lot of the preliminary work on this latest study, they were just baffled at our operation. A lot of them were used to doing commuter rails, Monday through Friday, a lot of business travel. When they saw the numbers here, based on the studies, the surveys they did, was that there was more travel on weekends through much of the year than there was Monday through Friday. So they were like, we can take the Monday through Friday plus Saturday and Sunday and get all that additional ridership because of the number of people moving or heading north every weekend and coming back to the tail end of the weekend.
And just as a historic perspective, on the very last days of Amtrak in 1985, it was about 250 people a day that rode that train between the Twin Cities and Duluth.
But did they ride it just to say adios to train travel?
There was a little bit of that, yes. A little bit of that.
You mentioned the stop in Hinckley, and we do have a map that kind of shows the route. So maybe you could walk us through that a little bit in terms of what would all be included.
Well, let's take a trip from Duluth down to the Twin Cities. You would board at the St. Louis County Heritage and Arts Center, the depot in downtown Duluth. Go across the Grassy Point Draw into Superior for a quick stop. And then it's full speed ahead down to the Hinckley area. There'd be a stop, possibly a loop track that would take you right into the casino itself. And a sandstone stop might be a possibility for cleaning the trains overnight at the end of the trip and the beginning of the trip and the days. Down to Cambridge, where now the route starts to perform, as John said, more like a commuter. These people are getting in and out of the Twin Cities for work. They're doing it on a daily basis. They're going to be on that train every single day. Same thing with the stop at the Coon Creek Foley Station, and then in downtown Minneapolis.
And these trains would be newer equipment. They wouldn't look anything like the old trains we remember.
They would be very fast. They would be able to accelerate quite quickly. They're going to be very quiet. They're going to be very smooth riding. They're going to have a lot of the creature comforts, like Wi-Fi is going to be in there. There's going to be custom seating. You're going to have room to spread out, do some work, and and then there'll be a bar car.
All right. Ken Buehler and John Ongaro, thank you both very much. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you. You're welcome.
That makes it seem Well, it's time for a look at the week's business news from Business North. President Barack Obama is sending his chief of staff to the Iron Range to assess the impact of unfair trade on the iron ore economy. White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough will hold a Tuesday meeting in Virginia where state and federal legislators are expected to address the downturn. Nearly 2,000 miners have temporarily lost their jobs due to low demand for steel and plummeting iron ore prices. President Obama has the authority to impose high tariffs that would help the domestic steel industry rebound.
Despite mining-related unemployment, Minnesota employers added 7,200 jobs in November, according to the Department of Employment and Economic Development. The unemployment rate of 3.2% is now at its lowest level since March of 2001, signifying an expanding economy. 9 of the state's 11 industrial sectors gained jobs in November. Not unexpectedly, manufacturing, which reflects the mining sector, was one of the 2 sectors reporting job losses.
Midwest Energy Resources Company of Superior celebrated a milestone this week, shipping its 500 millionth ton of coal. The firm began operations in 1976, receiving Western coal by train and reloading it on maritime vessels. Midwest Energy owns and operates the largest capacity coal transshipment facility on the Great Lakes, shipping more coal than all of the other Great Lakes coal dock facilities combined. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
If you have a comment on our program, call now. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send us an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. You can also go to the WDSE website for updates on your favorite programs, news about station events, and to find out about special programs during the holiday season. And Julie, this is our last show of this year due to Christmas and New Year's Day, so we're not going to be back with another program until early in January.
Kind of a nice schedule, gives us a little bit of a holiday break too.
That's right. All right. Well, we'll leave you tonight with video of the ocean-going vessel Cornelia, which finally left the Twin Ports this morning on its journey to Europe. The ship had been detained by the U.S. Coast Guard for 6 weeks, anchored just off Park Point, while reportedly under investigation for discharging oily water. The ship left just in time to make it through the St. Lawrence Seaway, which closes for the season on December the 30th. Here's hoping for smooth sailing on the rest of the journey. Now, for Julie and the crew here at Almanac North, I'm Dennis Anderson. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy New Year, and be kind.